Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. We've had many conversations with this young lady, but I can't imagine any conversation more important at a more important time. She is Michellene Davis. She's Executive Vice President, Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at RWJBarnabas Health. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you as well.
So people are about to see on their screen a graphic of a series connected to a series of programs, segments, conversations we're having, simply called Confronting Racism. What does really confronting racism mean to you?
It means going beyond just a one statement issue, ensuring that you speak truth to power, but that it is done in a way which ensures that others are welcome into the dialogue and conversation. For me, it is a prerequisite to the work that I do because racism is a public health issue.
Follow up on that. Racism, a public health issue tied to social determinants of health, which you've been talking about on the air here and in your work every day. Racism as a public health issue, go ahead.
So racism is a public health issue, yes, in fact, because of the impact that it has, the thread that runs between all of the social determinants of health, where and how you live and whether or not there's safe and affordable housing, whether or not you live in an area that has easy, affordable access to healthy fruit and vegetables, or whether or not you find yourself in the midst of a food desert, which is a place that doesn't have any, or a food swamp, a place which intentionally has been zoned in order to literally ensure that you have places that are there that have high fat, high fructose corn syrup, and high fried food entities, and no fresh fruit or produce. But also, for me, racism is a public health issue, even on the clinical side, because of the implicit bias and the role that it plays in ensuring that there is such a horrendous gap in maternal mortality outcomes. When you take a look at the same group of individuals who are harmed by all of these other systems and structures, what you will find is that they have the worst health outcomes as well, right? So one of the things that this causes us to do is to have to take a look at, well, why is that, right? It is not as if racism exists in systems and structures solely and apart. You know, everyone is now talking about systemic and structural racism, Steve, but the issue is that you've got to talk about individual systemic and structural racism.
What's the difference, Michellene?
Well, here's the rub, right? It is because of the fact that these systems and these structures have been created by individuals, right? Individuals create the policies, the processes, the practices that literally create the microcosm society in which we live, the societal contract under which you and I and everyone else actually exist. But it is literally the both implicit bias and dare I say, the actual racism of the individuals who author the systems and the structures and the policies and the practices that create this society that we live in. It is literally what comes up and what comes out as a result.
You know, as you listen to Michellene Davis, let me share a couple things about her and our relationship so that you don't have to Google it to find out. She's the vice chair of our board of trustees of our not-for-profit production company. RWJBarnabas Health is an underwriter of what we do in public broadcasting, and also I've done leadership development for the organization. That being said, Michellene, you and I have had countless conversations offline, text message, phone, all kinds of things at weird hours, let's say, about race, racism, a whole bunch of things connected to it. Loaded question. Why do you think it's so difficult for so many people who are of different whites and blacks and brown people, whites, blacks, and brown people, to have an honest, sometimes uncomfortable, but dare I use the word real, conversation about race, race relations, and racism? Why is it so hard? Loaded question, I know.
It's not loaded to me at all, my friend. But that is because of the fact that I know that you ask it in truth and authenticity because you actually want to know, right? It is a different thing.
That's me. By the way, I shouldn't, that sounds so self-serving. And I just realized as I said it, I wish I could get a mulligan on that golf term. But for so many many in our state, our region, our nation.
Yeah.
They're
I'm
not
getting there.
talking to each other. They're talking past each other. But no disrespect, Michellene, they're not doing what you and I try to do, at least.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually just going to say, you know, the difference is that, quite frankly, you, I do know you, and so I know that you come to me in truth and integrity, that there's authenticity to the searching that perhaps you or I might have, that is very different than sitting down across the table from someone and saying, why is everything about race with you, right? So what I will tell you is two things. One, it is so difficult now because we were taught not to do it, right? See, we were taught not to have discussions that were going to be considered controversial. We were taught not to talk about politics and religion and race, which is exactly how we got here, right? We were taught that to do so can be considered rude. And so unfortunately, as a result of that, we still find individuals who do not know how to do so, right? If in fact you have never had a conversation like this before, I really want to caution you, do not walk up to that one person of color in your workspace, the one you know that you actually don't talk about or to any other time, and just begin a dialogue, right? Because quite frankly, the issue and the reason why I refer to you and I is because of the fact that there is a history and there's been the establishment of trust. There is a relationship here. In those other situations, here's the rub. I don't serve you, we work together, right? And right, if in fact you truly want to know, there are these crazy, outrageous fines. They're called books. They exist everywhere. There are incredible resources. You have access to this incredibly, phenomenally, scientifically developed, technologically advanced entity called Google. And so, truth be told, there are lots of things that you can do on your own in order to identify videos and TED Talks and movies and dare I go on, right? Around what should we really, if you type into Google how to be an anti-racist, not only will books come up, but actually, right, an entire cadre of recommended book discussions and a series of authors that you can follow. So there is something to be said for those who endeavor to do a little bit of that research themselves and then want to have an educated discussion.
You know, as you said, Google, you know, it's so easy. You could look at racism, race relations in so many ways, but I'm gonna recommend that people Google this name and read about Emmett Till. Emmett Till. That's all I'm gonna say. And for those who ask, why do we have to keep rehashing history and going back? Let's move forward. We've had a black president already, Barack Obama. Come on. Let's move forward. Just Google Emmett Till. Why do I say that? Because I know you know why I say that, Michellene.
My friend, you say that for a variety of reasons, but perhaps chief among them is two things in particular. One, that the murder of Emmett Till was literally the first prong of the murder of George Floyd. Literally, it was when Emmett Till's mother refused to permit her son to be buried in a closed casket because she wanted the rest of the world to see what this country had done to her 14-year-old child.
What was he accused of doing? I'm sorry for interrupting, Michellene. I said we weren't going to talk about it and the horrific nature of it. What was he killed for?
So Emmett Till was killed over a blatant lie. Let's be honest. Because the woman, the member of the mainstream,
the white woman,
a white woman, lied and said to her husband that he had whistled at her. Now, the truth of the matter is the fact that Emmett Till, this beautifully brown, young 14-year-old baby boy, had very light, hazily eyes, right? And I firmly believe that it struck her. And so when looking at him, right? And listen, you can read the account. So I'll at least tell you that they can still read the accounts, right?
Yep.
That when she was caught looking at him, then she said, oh, well, he whistled at me, which caused her husband to go and get his brothers and his others and to kidnap, brutalize, and murder this child. And then what you and I both know is the fact that fast forward many, many years, she then admitted the fact that
The white woman.
made it up. Yep, that she made it up, that it was all made up.
She didn't want her husband to be mad at her?
That's right. And so here's the rub, right? That isn't the only case of that occurring, right? Neither in recorded history or in present day. But what we do know is the fact that in that instance, and seeing this beautiful young boy's body so ridiculously mangled, and then, as you know, right, tied to something, and I'm trying to leave a little bit out so that your watchers, that your viewers will be able to still discover some.
Make sure you read it, folks, in detail.
Yeah. That when his body was discovered, this bloated, brutalized body, the fact that the world had to look at the face of that child, and even back then, believing for a moment that he did whistle at her, society still had to stand up and say, no, wait a minute, enough is enough, right? But the truth be told, it is very analogous to an Ahmaud Arbery or a Trayvon Martin, right? This was some unauthorized group of white vigilantes who came after, under their own decision, their own deputization, in order to erect some kind of imaginary justice. Quote
unquote justice.
Right, which they never, A, had a right to do, nor B, a reason, right? So we see this over and over and over again, Steve. So I love that you told folks to take a look at Emmett Till, because I think what's really important is understanding all full well that for many of their friends or neighbors or colleagues or co-workers, that for many of them, many were alive during that time who are still alive during this time, right? And so the fact that we always know that that was possible, more that because of the systemic and structural issues we discussed, right, that it was actually probable. It is the always knowing that on any given day, this could be my child, this could be me, and the weathering of that.
As usual, we just barely scratched the surface, but I'm going to ask you this, because I always, as a woman of faith, of the church, who's incredibly spiritual and an optimist, in spite of what you just shared, the question is this: what reason or reasons do you have at this point to be hopeful? At this point in history, we're taping, literally, I'll disclose it's the 30th of June, 2020. Why are you hopeful that we will make genuine, real, sustaining, substantive progress around institutional racism, individual racism?
So, Steve, thank you for two reasons. One, for the question. Two, for knowing that I am, right? That despite it all and in spite of it all, that actually because of it all, I actually still am hopeful. You know, I don't believe in coincidence, right? And so while I don't think you or I or any of your viewers would have literally known on January 1st, 2020, that we would now find ourselves here, both having survived a global pandemic and an international revolution. Right?
That's right.
But I do know that we are here with a different generation who has uniquely and differently than the civil rights movement of the 60s, joined us en masse and literally simply saying, I cannot breathe if my brother cannot breathe, right? So why am I hopeful? I'm hopeful because of the fact that there are so many of us who were alive then, who are alive now, who literally are saying, what we're not going to do is be placated into changing your logo or removing a statue and thinking that we've actually gotten to anything that is real and alters substantially, right, the outcomes that we seek to change. I think that there's a reason to be hopeful because there are those who are like yourself who are lending your platforms and quite frankly understanding and embracing your privilege in order to force the question of accountability, not just of institutions, but of individuals. Those that we know and those who are in our own families, actually, which is actually where the most difficult discussions get held. It is not in the boardroom, it's around the kitchen table, right?
Yep.
And from what I'm hearing, those discussions are happening.
Michellene, thank you, as always, for just being you and just being with us and sharing. And I know you're not feeling 100% as we do this program, but you gave 100%. And just thank you on behalf of everyone in public broadcasting and our production company. And we have a lot of work to do. Thank you, Michellene.
Thank you, Steve.
I'm Steve Adubato. We'll be back.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, PSC&G, New Jersey Sharing Network, the Russell Berry Foundation, the New Jersey Education Association, Johnson & Johnson, Wells Fargo, the Adler Aphasia Center, and by Caldwell University. Promotional support provided by New Jersey Globe and by New Jersey Monthly.
Hi, I'm Governor Tom Kean. A dear friend of mine had aphasia, which is a language disorder that occurs from a brain injury or a stroke. It robs a person's ability to communicate, but it doesn't affect their intellect. Programs and services offered at the Adler Aphasia Center help to improve my friend's communication skills, as well as her self-confidence and quality of life. Most importantly, she was among people who understood her. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with aphasia, there is hope.